Have you ever thought of an Orthodox Jewish rabbi passing away and returning with just one name on his lips? Not that of an ancient sage or prophet, but Jesus. Hello, Rabbi David. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us how this unusual experience began? I hear that before the start of Shabbat everything went dark. I suddenly fainted, right there at home. My heart simply stopped. While the doctors were racing against time to revive me, what they didn't know was that I had already left. My soul had crossed over. I crossed into a place that human words cannot describe. And what I saw dismantled everything I thought I knew. I spent my entire life studying, praying, seeking the truth. An Orthodox Jew, dedicated. I never imagined that one day I would stand before Jesus. Yes, him. The one I spent decades rejecting with respect, but firmly. This was not just a near-death experience. It was an encounter, a revelation, something so profound that it turned my world upside down. My name is David Elephant, Encino, Brooklyn, New York, within a traditional Jewish family to the core. Ever since I can remember, I lived in this rhythm. Prayers like my father early in the morning, Hebrew school after regular classes, Shabbat dinners that stretched into the night, always with discussions about the Torah and Talmud around the table. Faith wasn't just part of our life. It was life. Everything revolved around it. Every choice, every conversation, every detail of the day had a spiritual meaning. And when I reached my early 20s, I was already decided. I wanted to be a rabbi. Not for show or any kind of power. It was because the Torah had gripped me in a way that only those who have felt it understand. It wasn't just a text to me. It was like the skeleton of creation, each letter with purpose. I studied for years, in the yeshiva, days, nights, without stopping. Memorized the Torah, delved into the Mishnah, faced the debates of the Talmud, learned from the commentaries of our greatest sages. My teachers were serious, firm men, and I tried my best to walk in their footsteps. When I was finally ordained, I took on a community, became a congregational rabbi. My day-to-day was study, teaching, counseling, group prayer. I loved those people, loved our history, our way of living. I felt a sacred weight in the calling to guide others on the path of the covenant, the one God made with Abraham and confirmed with Moses. I always took it seriously, very seriously. Regarding Christianity, I was never the type to hate or mock. I had Christian friends and admired their dedication to family, to prayer, but to me, they were wrong. Sincere, perhaps. But confused, I always saw Jesus as a Jewish teacher who ended up becoming the center of a religion, of course. In my mind, the Messiah had to bring lasting peace. Rebuild the temple, restore the exiles, not die on a cross. When someone came to talk to me about Jesus, I listened, responded politely. Sometimes I even explained our point of view based on the Torah, but never with anger. I just didn't believe. Simple as that. To me, Jesus was not the Messiah, not divine. He was a historical figure. And that's it. My faith was grounded in a unique, eternal, and indivisible God, and in a life guided by the mitzvot. Not by grace or redemption. I was sure of that, not out of arrogance, but because of everything I lived, studied, questioned, and experienced spiritually. I thought my foundation was unshakable, that nothing would change it, but I was wrong. My life was like a sacred clock, marked by centuries of tradition. I would wake up before sunrise, wrap the tefillin on my arm and forehead, and recite every word of the prayers with my whole heart. Every blessing, every line of the Shema was done with real intention. And after prayer, I would gather with other men in the synagogue to study the Torah. Before even having coffee, we were already debating love, justice, and the hidden secrets in the texts. That was the air my mind breathed. Those moments of study with my students always sharpened my thinking, made me review, rethink, see God's wisdom more deeply. I spent much of the mornings preparing lessons, teaching in synagogues and the Beit Midrash. I guided young people through the most complex passages of the Talmud, always insisting on something I learned early on, kavana, the intention. It's not enough to repeat. You have to feel, understand, dive into the heart of the law. In the afternoon, the routine changed. It was time to counsel. People from the community would come to me with doubts, some quite practical, others completely existential. A couple would seek me out to understand the rules of family purity. A widow would appear with teary eyes, just wanting company while reading the Tehillim. Sometimes I mediated delicate conflicts. It was in these encounters that I most felt my calling. It wasn't just erudition. I was a shepherd, a caregiver. My life was simple but full of meaning. And much of that came from my wife, Miriam. She was my foundation, a firm, wise woman with a faith so deep it moved me. Every Friday night, she would light the Shabbat candles with tears in her eyes. It was a sacred moment. We raised our 3 children with love and reverence. They studied in Jewish schools, learned Hebrew early, and only ate at home. Our kitchen was kosher. Everything had a purpose. Friday afternoons were magical. The house transformed, clean, silent, smelling of challah and roast chicken. We would sit at the table, bless the wine and bread, sing the Zemerat, and then dive into lively discussions about the Torah. It wasn't just tradition. It was life. It was joy. And to me, God wasn't distant. He dwelled in the details. Every commandment, every halakhic norm was a bridge to connect with him. I never felt faith as a burden. I always saw it as a gift. My vision was clear. We were a people with a mission, chosen not by merit, but because God entrusted his word to us. I didn't need proof of his existence. I saw God in the birth of a baby, in the seasons, in the miraculous survival of our people. I never doubted the Torah. I breathed it. Even when the topic was Christianity, I remained calm, respectful, but completely disagreed. I believed Christians had misinterpreted the scriptures, distorted the prophecies. Jesus, to me, was not the Messiah. The true Messiah would still come, to bring peace, rebuild the temple, initiate the era of redemption. Since that hadn't happened yet, my conviction remained intact. I was at peace with what I believed, wasn't seeking anything more, didn't feel lacking anything. It was a Thursday afternoon, early spring. I had just counseled a couple preparing for marriage. We talked about the ketubah, about customs, family. I left the room with my mind already on the sermon I was going to prepare for Shabbat. I was excited, wanted to talk about the parasha Vayikra and the true meaning of sacrifice. But on the way down the synagogue corridor, something strange happened. I felt a tightness in my chest. At the time, I thought it was just indigestion or a muscle pain and ignored it. Stress before Shabbat was common, with so much to organize, but the discomfort didn't go away, on the contrary. The pain started spreading to my shoulders and down my left arm. My breathing became short. I leaned against the wall, trying not to show anything. My vision started to blur. Even so, I convinced myself it wasn't serious. I was 52 years old. Ate well. Walked every day. Had no family history, and Miriam was waiting for me at home. When I arrived, I tried to disguise it with a smile. She looked straight at me and said, "You're pale. What happened?" "Just a little pressure. It should pass," I murmured, trying to reassure her. But she didn't believe it. "Sit down. Should I call the doctor?" No need. Just give me a moment." I started to speak but couldn't finish. An intense pain tore through my chest. My legs gave way. I collapsed into the dining room chair, clutching my chest with both hands. I saw Miriam's face change in an instant. From concern to panic. Miriam grabbed the phone with trembling hands and called emergency services, her voice shaking. But still, it sounded firm as she gave our address. The following minutes were complete chaos. My breathing became short, sweat ran down my face, and I felt as if my entire body was giving in, as if something was crushing me from the inside. The pain wasn't a stab. It was a weight like cast iron on my chest. I tried to pray, but no words came out. I wanted to tell Miriam that I loved her, that I was sorry for everything. But I couldn't even do that. I was trapped inside myself, while the world around turned to smoke. When the paramedics arrived, they came in like a hurricane. They acted quickly. I heard their voices, but they seemed distant, muffled, as if I were hearing underwater. I saw faces floating, hands moving, everything kind of blurry. One of them leaned in and asked if I could hear him. I tried to move my head, respond, anything, but the body wouldn't obey. When they put me on the stretcher, I still had one last glimpse of Miriam. She was standing at the door, hand covering her mouth, tears rolling, and then it all vanished. The pain, the sounds, the light. Everything disappeared at once, leaving only silence. And then, nothing. The next thing I remember is feeling nothing. No pain, no panic, no weight, just stillness. At first I thought I had fainted, but something was different. I was conscious, fully more awake than I had ever been. My senses were sharp, but I didn't feel my body. Wasn't lying down. Not standing, not anywhere. I simply was. It was then that I saw, below me. Yes, below. As if I were floating. I saw two paramedics over a man on a stretcher right in my dining room. One was doing chest compressions, the other preparing the defibrillator and shouting commands. It took just a moment to realize. That man was me. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion. How could I see myself from the outside? How was I hearing all that with such clarity? Even being outside, the voices seemed distant but clear, as if I were underwater. Miriam was huddled in the hallway, praying, face buried in her hands. I wanted to run to her, shout that I was here, that everything would be okay, but I couldn't. No voice, no body, not even air to breathe. I tried to move, reach out, nothing. I had no hands. My presence was there, but it didn't fit anywhere. It was like a loose thought in space. I watched the scene, but it seemed both near and far. I saw my body, pale and still, empty, and felt a deep sadness, not fear, sadness. Not for me, but for them, for Miriam, for our children. For everyone still trapped in that moment, not understanding what was happening. That's when it hit me. I was out of the body. Literally. I don't know how long I stayed there. Time, in that dimension, made no sense. I just know I kept watching. I saw the paramedics place the defibrillator paddles on my chest. I saw my body jerk with the shock. One of them cursed softly. The other checked my pulse, shook his head, and resumed compressions. We're losing him, someone said, but I wanted to shout. I'm here. I haven't left. But no one heard me. Nothing in me moved. And yet I was there, completely aware. A strange calm began to envelop me. It wasn't peace, but a silence that emptied me. I stopped fighting, just kept watching. Without attachment, without panic, just there, and then something began to change. The room around me started to dissolve. It didn't darken, exactly. It just became less real, like a memory beginning to fade. The sounds, the movements, everything was quieting down, as if someone were slowly turning down the volume. I felt I was being pulled away, but not abruptly. It was gentle, almost kind. And deep down I knew I was crossing a line, a point of no return. Whatever came next, I no longer belonged to the world I knew. As I moved away from the scene I had left behind, everything began to dissolve. The walls of my house, the ambulance lights, the frantic coming and going of the paramedics. Everything was vanishing like mist under the morning sun. But what came next wasn't darkness. It was light, only not ordinary light. It didn't come from a lamp or the sun. It didn't hit anything. It was the space around me. It cast no shadow, had no origin. It was simply there, surrounding me, filling me, calling me. And there was something alive in it. It's the only way I can explain. This light had consciousness. It was warm, welcoming, almost as if it were breathing. With each silent pulse of it, something inside me was transforming. A peace I had never felt. An absolute clarity. And above all, love. Not an abstract love, but one that knows you completely, and yet envelops you. A love that holds you when you don't even know you need to. The sadness I had felt floating over my body still existed, but now it was covered with comfort, like a child being cradled in a father's arms. There was no sound, but it was as if the very space spoke to me, not in words, but in understanding. A silent invitation enveloped me. Come. This call awakened something in me. It wasn't authoritative, but impossible to ignore. Yet I hesitated, not out of fear, but because it was all beyond anything I had ever imagined. I spent my life studying what might exist after death, and even so, it was totally unexpected. It wasn't a tribunal, it wasn't eternal rest, it was more. I always believed in God, but saw him as unreachable, wrapped in untouchable mystery. But there he was close, very close, as if he knew me completely, and he did. But instead of condemnation, I felt an invitation, a call, and I felt him examining me, not with harshness, but with a purity so clear it was impossible to hide anything. He not only saw what I did, but who I had become, and yet he didn't reject me. Still, something inside me resisted. That voice, trained by years of Torah, of texts, of traditions, said it didn't make sense, it didn't fit. But another voice, more intimate, spoke louder. This is true. This is what you've always sought. And I knew. Deep down I knew. That light wasn't against the God I worship. It was God himself, in fullness. It was as if the veils that always separated me from him were being gently removed. And it was within this light that I felt another presence. It wasn't separate from God, but distinct. Someone. I still didn't see the face, but I knew. Someone was there, watching me. Not in a hurry, but with the patience of someone who always knew that moment would come. And the closer I got, the more I felt. It wasn't just a place. It was in person. A person who knew me better than I knew myself. And it wasn't just a reception, it was a call. The presence began to take shape. At first, just an impression. Like a silhouette behind a veil of light. But then, it was as if this veil was lifted. He was there, before me, majestic. Yes, but not oppressive, radiant, but not blinding. It wasn't the light that illuminated him. It was he who shone. His robe moved like a breeze, with a soft glow, almost like white fire. And the face, to this day, I lack words. There were no flaws, no harshness. His features were strong, yet gentle, eternal, but human. But it was the eyes that broke me. Those eyes, they pierced through me. They saw beyond my convictions, my knowledge, my theological security. They went straight to who I really was. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Deep down, I knew exactly who he was. Even after spending my life rejecting, studying about him from a distance, refuting with logic and doctrine, now there was no room for debate. No argument was needed, no word. I didn't know who he was. I felt it fully, inevitably, unquestionably. It was him, Jesus. The name wasn't spoken aloud, but it echoed inside me like a silent thunder. I took a step back, not out of anger, but because everything inside me began to crumble. No, it can't be. My knees failed. I fell. Not by force, but by the crushing weight of the truth hitting me. I spent my life seeking the truth, thought I had found it in the Torah. And in part I did. But there, before him, I realized I only knew the shadow, the outline of something much greater. He approached. He didn't accuse me, didn't avoid me. He knelt. David, he said, and when he spoke my name, something deep inside me responded. It was love, yes, but also authority, as if he wasn't just calling me, but activating something that had always been dormant. You sought God all your life. Love served him. In the synagogue, his word with sincerity, my tears fell. I wanted to explain, justify myself, but no words came out. You were faithful, he continued, but you didn't understand the fullness of the plan. That pierced me, not with pain, but with a truth so clear it left me bare inside. All my training, all the confidence in texts and traditions, nothing prepared me for that moment, but there was no condemnation, only revelation. You know the scriptures. He said, you walked the path of obedience, but the Torah was never the destination, it was the sign. The covenant you honored pointed to me. My heart broke right there. Not because I felt betrayed, but because I realized that all my life I had missed him. In every verse, in every prayer, he was there, and I didn't see. And yet he welcomed me, knew me with all my flaws, and still called me closer. I cried, but not out of despair. It was for something greater, something I had never experienced. Wholeness. The truth behind the truth. And yet, a part of me still hesitated. Why? I asked in silence. Why now? Why me? He looked at me. The compassion in his eyes was unbearable. Because I love you, he said. And because you are ready to see. I knelt before him trembling, trying to absorb everything. The light around changed. It didn't disappear. It became more intense. Deeper. And then something happened, not outside of me, but inside. Jesus extended his hand, not physically, but with something more powerful. And suddenly I was thrown into a vision. I saw myself on top of a mountain. The wind blew strong. I knew that place immediately. Mount Moriah. I saw Abraham, old and firm, with a serious face. Beside him, Isaac, young and innocent, carrying the wood for his own sacrifice. I had taught this text hundreds of times, but now I was seeing. I felt Abraham's pain, Isaac's trust, the weight of obedience, saw the knife rise, heard the angel shout. Abraham stopped. A ram appeared in the bush, and before I could breathe relieved, the scene changed. Another hill, another sky, but this time, no ram. I saw Jesus, wounded, carrying a cross. Blood on his face, the body broken. But unlike Isaac, he knew. And even so, he went willingly. At that moment, I understood. The story of Isaac was more than a test. It was a foreshadowing, a portrait. Abraham's son was spared. God's son? No time to process. I was taken to another scene. The desert, the Israelites falling poisoned by snakes. Moses raised a bronze serpent on a pole and commanded the people to look and live. That always seemed strange to me. Why look at the symbol of the very poison? And then I saw overlaid the image of the cross. Jesus, arms outstretched. And I remembered, almost as if someone whispered in my ear, a verse from the New Testament I read and dismissed. Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. My mouth went dry. My heart raced. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't Christian manipulation. It was real, precise, prophetic. Then came the prophets. I saw with my own eyes a man beaten, bloodied, unrecognizable. Isaiah 53. Despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. By his wounds we are healed. I always read that and wondered, who was this man? Now I knew. It was him. They will look on me, the one they have pierced. That verse always intrigued me. How could God be pierced? But now, before him, everything fit. It was Jesus. Psalm 22 came next. They pierced my hands and my feet. They divided my garments, each verse, each symbol, each image. Now it was clear. All the shadows I studied my whole life, now had a form, substance, body, and more than anything, had a name. It was him, Jesus. The name echoed inside me like a wave that makes no noise, but sweeps everything. I recoiled, not out of anger, but because I felt my entire interior breaking. It can't be. My knees gave way again. I collapsed, not by his impact, but by the weight of revelation. I had sought the truth with all my being, believed it was found in the Torah, and in a way, yes, I found it. But now, before him, I realized I had only seen fragments, reflections, the shadow of something infinitely greater. He didn't accuse me, didn't despise me, approached with gentleness. David, hearing my name coming from his mouth, was like a forgotten part of my soul had awakened. You searched the scriptures, he said with eyes full of compassion, but didn't know the one they testified about. At that moment, everything crumbled. He was always there, hidden in plain sight, and somehow I didn't see, or maybe didn't want to see. The light around us changed again, didn't get weaker, expanded, as if the very fabric of reality was being gently torn. I felt, I knew something sacred was about to be shown. And then, without words, I realized I was about to see heaven. It wasn't a place in the geographic sense. It was a presence. Everything was love, but not this emotional or romantic love we talk about here. It was something pure, intense, essential. It wasn't just around me. It was me, in every thought, in every breath, in every beat of what was left of my being. The peace there wasn't silence. It was a sound vibrating within existence itself. A melody without instruments, made of eternity. I looked around and saw people, but not with bodies like ours. They were like light, joy, freedom. They moved with lightness, without weight, without time. And there was something in their gaze. No sadness, no shame, no mask. They were whole, free at home. Free at home. What struck me most was how each one there was known completely, and yet completely loved. There was no competition, no who is more, who did more. They were connected, united, not by being the same, but by being in tune. And at the center of it all, God not hidden, not distant, but present, like the air you don't see, but feel in every part of the body. I turned to Jesus. His face seemed to carry all that glory, as if even heaven was little compared to his presence. This, he said, looking at the scene before us, is not a reward. It's the fulfillment of love. It's the relationship brought to fullness. He pointed to those celebrating in that peace. They are here, not because they followed rules, but because they knew me, because they accepted what was given freely. I remained silent. It overwhelmed me. I spent my entire life focused on obedience, effort, discipline, and now I saw a joy I never dreamed of. They didn't earn this? I asked, almost voiceless. No, he replied with tenderness. They received. He wasn't dismissing the Torah. He was showing me its destination. The law always pointed to this. It wasn't a ladder to climb. It was a sign saying, this way I didn't want to leave. Part of me already ached just imagining leaving there. But I knew there was still more to see. The light was softening, not all at once, but like embers losing heat slowly. The music stopped. The harmony quieted. Then came the cold. Not physical. It was absence. The absence of peace, of love, of presence. The air, if I can call it that, was dense, full of sadness. I didn't shine anymore. I was in darkness. Not ordinary darkness. It was a living shadow, suffocating. Something pressing from all sides. It wasn't just lack of light. It was the refusal of light. It took me a while to see anything. But when my eyes adjusted, I saw figures, some curled up on themselves, others walking in circles, clinging to nothing. They were human, or at least were once. Now they appeared blurred, faded, like echoes of what they once were, and their faces, what I saw there wasn't torment from outside, it was pain from within. A kind of regret indescribable, a bitter longing, a void that screamed. They weren't being punished. They were suffering the consequence of a separation, which deep down they knew could have been avoided. They knew they rejected, not out of ignorance. I felt Jesus by my side again. His presence still with me, but more distant, like a whisper in the storm. This is the reality of separation. He said. His voice wasn't harsh. It was sad. It's not punishment, David. It's consequence. I couldn't speak, just felt they are loved. He continued, each one like you. But love doesn't force, it invites. And when rejected, it becomes separation. I wanted to look away. Wanted to forget. Wanted not to have seen, but couldn't. A woman caught my attention. She was near a huge abyss, eyes fixed, perhaps on the light I had seen before, tears silently falling. She reached out repeatedly, like trying to grasp something she knew and lost. Others wandered aimlessly, trapped in cycles. Some simply stood, expressionless, directionless, lost. A scream began to grow inside me. Not for me, for them. How long? I asked Jesus. How long have they been here? He didn't give me a direct answer. Just looked with sadness and said, the truth must be chosen. They didn't accept there, and didn't accept here. That's when I broke. My heart seemed to split in two. I who spent my life believing in justice and consequences now faced something not unjust, but definitive. The torment didn't come from fire or chains, it came from what they lost. And worse, from what they still chose not to accept. Jesus looked at me with a love I'll never forget. His eyes were full of pain. That's why I came. He said calmly not to condemn, but to save. At that moment, everything made sense. He wasn't angry. There was no condemnation. He wept for them, and still weeps. The light returned, gentle, like the sun rising slowly after a very dark night. The warmth of his presence enveloped me again, and I cried, but no longer out of fear. It was pain for what I saw, for the separation, for the refusal, for the choice to move away from love. Jesus stood by my side in silence, giving me time to digest everything. Until without words we moved. We didn't walk. It was like crossing something invisible. And then we stopped before a scroll. But it wasn't ordinary. It was alive. Words sprang from the surface, like conscious flames. It was eternal. Covenant, he said. You are love. You are a scroll. You lived by it. I nodded, still trembling inside. And you were right to honor it, he continued. It is sacred. But you were never meant to carry it alone. The scroll opened more. I saw the texts of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, then the prophets, the Psalms, the writings, and then something supernatural happened. The passages began to connect like invisible threads. Genesis 22nd, Abraham and Isaac, Exodus 12. The lamb's blood on the doors, Numbers 21st. The bronze serpent lifted in the desert, Psalm 22. They pierced my hands and my feet. Isaiah 53. Crushed for our iniquities, Zechariah face. Thou look on me, the one they have pierced. Everything fit. They weren't loose texts. They were pieces of a divine plan. The same plan I studied my whole life, but without seeing the complete design. Jesus looked at me and said with a firm voice, but full of tenderness, I didn't come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill these words pierced through me like a sword, but not of pain, of clarity, of liberation. I always believed in the covenant with Israel, always taught that the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were eternal, and still believed in it. But now I saw. The covenant was a beginning, a foundation, a road leading to him. Every sacrifice, he said, every feast, every commandment, all pointed to the future, not to erase what came before, but to bring it to fullness. It was as if the revelation was too heavy for my chest to bear. I whispered, all these years, I thought we were still waiting. You were, he replied with sweetness, and I came. But many didn't recognize me because they expected power. Not love, a throne, not a cross. I thought of the years and years of Passover, the nights I said, next year in Jerusalem, the prayers we made asking for redemption, the hope of the Messiah, and now I saw. He came, and I didn't recognize. My heart was torn between love and pain. I taught them wrong, even trying to get it right. I told them the Messiah was still to come, I murmured. Jesus looked me in the eyes. His eyes were full of truth and mercy, and now I'm showing you I came. The covenant wasn't broken. It was fulfilled. The promises weren't forgotten. They were completed, and you, David, you are loved. Your devotion wasn't in vain. It brought you here. I covered my face with my hands and cried, not out of shame but reverence. I had defended my faith with all my might, had honored the scriptures with zeal, and indeed they were true, but they weren't the end, and now I saw the rest of the story. There, before me, was the living Torah, the fulfillment of the law, the Word incarnate, the one for whom everything existed, and for the first time in my life, I let go of what I knew, and opened my arms to what I felt. I only heard Jesus looked at me, and even without thunder or lights in the sky I knew. Something immense was about to be said. You were faithful, he spoke with a voice that was both firm and full of tenderness. You love God with all your heart, soul, and strength. You taught His word with sincerity. Those words weighed, but not as a burden, as honor. He wasn't erasing my past. He was validating it. But then, with delicacy, he continued. Now, you are being called to something greater. I couldn't respond, just felt you will be a bridge. He said, between what was and what is, between the covenant you lived and the fulfillment you now saw. There was a pause. He wanted the words to sink in, and they did. To others like you, he continued. Others who love God sincerely, but still don't see the fullness of His plan. You must go to them, not to accuse, but to reveal. Show what you now know that hit me with everything. Me, of all people, a rabbi who spent a lifetime rejecting Jesus, now tasked with witnessing what I denied. But why me? I whispered. Broken. He looked deep into my eyes. Because your heart is sincere. Because you sought God not with arrogance, but with love. And because those who trust you will hear when you speak, I collapsed to my knees. I am not worthy, I whispered. No one is, he replied, but all are loved. And now you have been sent. Those words didn't erase my fear, but ignited courage. There I understood this mission wasn't born of guilt. It was born of love. Love for God, love for my people, love for the truth I always wanted and finally found. And then, with everything in me, I said yes. The moment I accepted, the atmosphere changed. The light remained. The peace too, but I felt something move, like a pull. Not taking me away from Him, but bringing me back. It's time, Jesus said. What you saw is not just for you. It must be shared. I didn't want to go. Everything in me screamed to stay there in that perfect presence, but I knew He was right. With one last look, He placed something in me, not with hands, but with spirit, a clarity, a fire, a call that I knew would never go out. Then everything sped up. I felt myself falling, not like a fall, but as if passing through layers of reality. The light was fading, the warmth disappearing. The silence gave way to sound, noises, pain. A sharp pain tore through my chest, as if something was crushing me from within. I gasped, tried to breathe, blinding light on the ceiling, fluorescent, cold, machines beeping, voices shouting. He's back! Stay with us, Rabbi! Hold on! Hands pressing my body, needles, cold pads! I was back! Back to the hospital, back to the body, back to the world I had left. The pain was almost unbearable, not just in the body, but in the soul. The contrast between where... And yet I breathed. Weak, shallow, but I breathed, turned my head slowly. Miriam was there, by my side, holding my hand tightly, eyes full of tears. She whispered my name, as if it were a prayer. I wanted to tell everything, every detail, every truth, but my throat was dry, my body too weak. So I just looked with that look. I asked her to understand, I'm alive. But nothing is like before. Everything changed. I could only listen. My body was present, but my soul was still there. In everything I saw, everything I lived, Jesus looked at me, and even without thunder or flashes, I knew. Something sacred was about to be said. You were faithful. His voice was firm, but gentle. You loved God with all you had, taught with truth, with sincerity. Those words touched me deeply. He wasn't rejecting my journey. He was honoring it. But then he said something that changed everything. Now, you are being called for more. I couldn't respond, just felt. You will be a bridge. He continued, between what was and what is, between the covenant you lived and the fullness you now knew. We stayed silent for a moment, until he completed. There are others like you, who truly love God, but still don't see the complete plan. You must go to them, not to condemn, but to show what you saw that crushed me and lifted me at the same time. I, who spent a lifetime rejecting Jesus, was now called to witness about him. But why me? I whispered. Because your heart is sincere, because you sought the truth with love, and because those who trust you will listen when you speak. I knelt. I am not worthy, no one is, he said, but all are loved. And you have been sent. Those words didn't erase my fear, but gave me strength. There, between heaven and earth, I said my yes, truly, from the soul. And the moment I accepted, something in me changed. The peace remained, but I felt a movement, a return. It's time, he said. What you saw is not just for you, it's to be told. I wanted to stay, everything in me wanted. But he knew, and so did I. With one last look, Jesus gave me something invisible, not with hands, with spirit, a fire, a clarity, a truth that would never leave me. And then came the fall, not down but inward, as if I passed through layers. I felt my chest being crushed. I gasped, sought air desperately. White lights, machines beeping, desperate voices. He's back. Stay with us, Rabbi. Hands touching me, needles, cold sheets. I was back. Back to the hospital, to the body, to the world. The pain was absurd, physical and emotional, compared to what I had lived that was suffocating. But still I breathed, turned my head with effort. Miriam was there, holding my hand, eyes swollen from crying so much. She whispered my name as if it were a prayer. I wanted to speak, tell everything, but my throat was dry. I was too weak. Tell everything, but my throat was dry. So I just looked at her, with that look, asked her to see. I came back. But nothing is the same anymore. The days that followed were calm on the outside, but inside, a storm. I lay in that bed, surrounded by machines and noises. What would Miriam say? My children, my students, the congregation, would they call me crazy, a traitor, a heretic? My entire identity was built around the rabbi I was, and now I had met the one I spent my life ignoring. The guilt came in waves, guilt for not seeing before, and guilt for still being silent. On the third night I couldn't sleep. The body hurt, but the heart much more. With difficulty I sat up and opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside was the book. It wasn't the Torah, nor the Talmud. It was a New Testament. A Christian had given it to me years ago. I kept it out of politeness, never touched it. That night, I opened it, my hands trembling. The first phrase, Book of the Genealogy of Jesus Christ, Son of David, Son of Abraham. I continued reading, slowly, and there he was. Not just the Jesus I met in the light, but the same from the prophets, walking, healing, teaching. I reached the Sermon on the Mount. Do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I came to fulfill. It was like a wave. He wasn't a new religion. He was the continuation, the fulfillment. The shadows I knew were gaining form. When I returned home, everything seemed the same. The dining table, the Torah books, the mezuzah on the door. But I was different. I walked like a stranger within my own home. I knew what I needed to do, but fear still held me back. I started with those I loved most, gathered Miriam and my 3 children in the living room. They already sensed something was coming. I need to tell what happened, and I told. Everything. The light, the presence, Jesus, heaven, hell, the visions, the words, the mission. I saw the faces change, confusion, doubt, silence. Until my middle son asked, "Are you saying you believe in Jesus?" I hesitated, then just nodded. Yes. I met him. I didn't hear about him, I heard and understood. He is the fulfillment of everything we believe. Miriam cried, said nothing, just looked. Trying to find the man she knew, my daughter asked. And the Torah, everything you taught us? It's still true, I replied. But now, I see the whole picture. He didn't erase, he completed. There were tears, many questions, long silences, but they stayed. They listened and didn't leave. The hardest part came later, telling the congregation. I stood up on a Shabbat morning with my heart pounding like never before. I looked at those faces, people I trusted, who I guided, who followed me for years, and said, I need to speak to you, not as a rabbi, But as a man who died and returned, completely changed, I described the light, the presence, the visions, and then said the phrase I knew deep down would split that room in two. I met Jesus. And now I believe he is the Messiah that our scriptures always pointed to. The air grew dense. Silence. Sighs. Murmurs. Some lowered their heads. Others cried. Some stood up and left. But some stayed. Eyes fixed on mine, not with anger, but with thirst. I saw a man at the back, a skeptic, with whom I debated in Torah studies. Now, with tears streaming down his face, I didn't try to convince anyone. Didn't argue, just told with truth, with respect, with love. Said I still loved the Torah, that my identity as a Jew hadn't died. It had grown. I didn't abandon the covenant. I saw its fulfillment. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most honest. And in that honesty, something began to change, slowly without formulas. But truly, life after that didn't get easier. It became clearer. Today I no longer see the Torah and the Gospel as two distant books. I see them as one story. The law I once saw as a path to righteousness, I now understand as a map. And the only one who could follow it perfectly was him. Every time I open the scriptures, both the Tanakh and the New Testament, it's like seeing with new eyes. Where I once saw commandments, I now see promises. Where I once saw shadows, I now see substance. Messiah, my study didn't stop. On the contrary, it deepened. Verses I recited for years now bring me to tears. Isaiah 53. Psalm 22nd. The rituals of Passover, Yom Kippur. The sacrifices of Leviticus. All of them now make sense. Jesus didn't erase anything. He filled everything, and he changed me. I started speaking. First in small groups, then in interfaith meetings, not to debate theology, but to share a real story. Some listened with open hearts. Others, not so much. I was cut off by colleagues, called a heretic, a traitor, but I hold no grudge. I understand because I was once in that place, closed, defensive, too certain to see what was right in front of me. It took literally dying to see, but with every door that closed, others opened. I met so many seekers, Jews, Christians, people in between, lost between two traditions. And to them I say, Jesus is not the end of Judaism. He is its fulfillment. Miriam, my wife, who once listened in silence, stunned, now reads the New Testament with me. We pray together, not out of habit, but for communion. Our children, once skeptical, now ask deeper questions. And I don't rush anything. The truth doesn't impose, it reveals. And that's what I feel called to do. Not pressure, not force, reveal, be a bridge between the Torah and the Gospel, between the law and grace, between hearts and the Messiah. I've learned to live with tension, with costs. The truth is rarely comfortable, but it sets you free. Yes, I lost much. Community, status, certainty. But what I saw in that light is worth more than anything. I wouldn't trade my encounter with Jesus for anything. And that's why I speak. In synagogues, in churches, in online forums. Sometimes out loud. Sometimes in a whisper, not to convince, but out of gratitude. Gratitude to the one who knew me when I should have died. The one who called me by name. The one who called me by name. The one who gave me a new chance. Not just to live, but to live in truth. If you've come this far, if you've read all this, I want to leave you with a request. Seek the truth, even when it challenges everything you thought you knew, even if it costs comfort, reputation, or community, because it's worth it. And when you find not an idea, but a person, everything will change. Just as it happened to me, I read the Torah like someone reading a map, believing I already knew the destination. But after that encounter, I realized the map pointed to a place I had never reached. Today, when I read the scriptures, I don't see loss, I see fullness. The Torah wasn't erased, it was illuminated. The promises made to Abraham, Moses, and David weren't replaced. They were fulfilled, and now I walk between two worlds, still keep Shabbat, still fast on Yom Kippur, still study the Talmud, but with the certainty that the story didn't end there, it continued. It went on to the Gospels, to the cross, and to the empty tomb. I've learned not to seek acceptance. My mission is not to please, it's to be honest, and if just one person, just one, hears this and starts to wonder if Jesus could be who he said he was, then it was worth it. Miriam walks with me. In silence, in faith. Our prayers are different now, less ritual, more relationship. Our children ask. I don't give ready answers. I give what freed me, the truth. To you who hear my story and feel uncomfortable, I understand. I also fought against it. Closed that door for decades. But one day Jesus opened it, and what I found wasn't a betrayal. It was the conclusion of everything I always believed. So please, if you can take something from here, take this. Seek the truth. It may not be comfortable. It may shake everything. But if you find the one I found, you will never walk in darkness again. What an incredible and transforming. The Bible reminds us in John, chapter 3, verse 8. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. Thank you very much, Rabbi David, for sharing this profound and courageous experience with us. And to you who watched until here, may the blessings of the Eternal touch your life with light, clarity, and truth. See you in the next video. Until then, keep seeking, keep feeling, and never stop questioning with an open heart.